past 12 years, my family have been running away from deaths. So I always had that reflection in my mind that physically I'm safe, there is no Taliban to come and kill me. However, my family is running for their lives, and that's the reality of a lot of people from Afghanistan. For me, when I left my country, I was really young. A decision that my mom made for me because I was at risk of being killed by the Taliban.
A young 17-year-old boy embarked on a life-threatening boat journey to Australia. In hopes of arriving to a safe haven, he was met with the cruel and dehumanising Australian migration policies. Zaki Haidari is a young 29-year-old Hazara refugee and human rights advocate from a middle-income family from Afghanistan. At the young age of 17, Zaki's journey began in the hands of people smugglers. With great fear and uncertainty, he was detained and smuggled through various countries with little to no food, water, and clear direction of which country he would arrive at.
However, the challenges are there.
Despite his fear, Zaki did not lose hope.
My hope was to find safety. Of course, I had a lot of fears. My head was full of fears of what's coming next for me. Once I leave my family, I have no protection. I was in the hand of smugglers. I've been through many countries and I have gone through a lot of trauma, harsh experiences as a lot of refugees are going through.
As a young person, it was Zaki's first time experiencing prison.
I have never been in prison. I have never committed a crime to be in jail. Everything was horrifying, but overall the environment was like a prison.
This is one of the Oscars that normally 30 or 40 people are sleeping in.
We're all human. We deserve love. We deserve knowing or getting to know other people. When we were in detention center in Tasmania, we had a group of grannies that were visiting us I believe every Friday from memory, and that was the time that I was seeing Australian people. So we're sitting and talking about Australia and how the people are outside of these fences. I think that was the time that I could think that this is a country potentially that would provide me protection because people were really kind.
However, Zaki was the luckiest of those who arrived, as he was detained for 3 months. Being released in the community on a bridging visa did not offer Zaki the opportunities he hoped for, as he was not granted working rights and funding for education.
As a young person, it was shocking that Australia is a liberal country where they respect basic human rights, and those basic human rights were denied to me. I was forced to stay home. I was forced to not learn the language.
Taking any opportunity to access education, Zaki began to learn English, followed by a diploma in IT and graphic design. But this wasn't easy for him.
However, I started volunteering with Amnesty International Australia. Through that, I met a journalist. He was really keen to do a story on me. He promised me that he will go on asking private universities and colleges if they have scholarship. That's how I got a scholarship from a private college.
Please put your hands together and listen very closely to Mr. Zaki Haidari.
Thank you very much, everyone, for having me.
Cruel temporary protection visas and safe haven enterprise visas were introduced to give those seeking asylum in Australia false hope. Identifying a lack of voices of those with lived experiences was the catalyst for Zaki's work in refugee advocacy.
We have to remember that the other 12,000 or more refugees are still suffering in silence. There was a false hope with that if you get a 5-year protection visa, if you live in a rural area, then you can apply for skilled visas, which I have done my time. I applied for a temporary visa, I got my refugee status granted, then I moved to Canberra. I lived there for 4 years, knowing that this is a wrong policy. But I've done everything that I was asked to do. At the end of the 4-year cycle, there was no pathway for me to apply for skilled visas because this was a false hope to the asylum community.
With a vision to amplify voices of those who are recognised refugees, Zaki is now addressing misconceptions about people seeking asylum in Australia. As a refugee, Zaki has been living under temporary protection with no guarantee of long-term security.
Being on a temporary visa, everything is temporary for you. Your life, your decisions, your future, and your daily decisions that you're making, because you don't know what's the end of the life that you have now. Many of my friends could not survive. They ended their lives. Being in Australia for over a decade is still not valued as a human being. In their words, there is no humanity in this world, so they ended their lives.
Believing that there is no humanity left in this world, Zaki tells the story of how many of the friends he arrived with took their lives. But Zaki chose to persevere through the challenges.
And that's how you change narrative. If I would never told my story, people would have not known me. So I did take the risk. When you're out in public, you will receive a lot of negative comments. However, my hope always was that once they hear me, second time when they hear me, hopefully they understand that we are human beings. We are seeking safety. We are fleeing persecution. We are fleeing war and conflicts. I came as a refugee in Australia by boat, with no funding for studies.
12 years later, Zaki Haidari is a key player in the refugee advocacy space, advocating for refugee rights both domestically and internationally.
Most of them are fathers that they haven't seen their kids and their wife for the past 10 years.
After the fall of Afghanistan in 2021 and fear of continued genocide against the Hazara people by the Taliban, Zaki and his colleagues at Action for Afghanistan successfully lobbied the government for an additional 16,500 humanitarian places for refugees fleeing the country.
With the movement of Action for Afghanistan, what we have done is we mobilized different communities, church groups, mosques, media, public figures to come and support our voice. And that's how we mobilized the whole community, not just the diaspora communities.
In early 2022, over 4,000 refugees from Afghanistan came together in front of Parliament in Canberra to call for the abolition of temporary visas, as there is no option for refugees to return to Afghanistan.
This was the biggest proud for me to see finally the diaspora communities are standing with their refugee in front of Parliament House, where the decision were made to punish these people.
Being known by the Taliban for his advocacy against their regime caused great fears for Zaki and his family when they returned.
As a result of that, when I was involved with Action for Afghanistan, I got trolled by the Taliban on Twitter. They were calling me awful names, including that I'm betraying my country, I'm betraying my people. And my fear was that they will come to my family and they will take away my sisters. My anxiety and stress was really high. I was in a sense of shock. I didn't know how to respond and what to say. Should I shut everything that I had on social media? But again, they could Google me. They could find things that I've said against the regime and how my advocacy has been, against the regime and their brutality, in particular towards my community.
Despite his fear, Zaki never lost hope. With the support of the Australian government, he was reunited with his family.
When my family was granted visa, I was counting minutes. I could not sleep, I could not rest. I was searching for a house, but most importantly was that I was seeing my mom and my sisters. I could not drive that day, so I had a friend that borrowed my car, and we went to the airport, and I was waiting for my family to come. It took them forever to come out of the airport, and I finally saw them and I just ran into them. I could not wait anymore. So I ran and hugged my mom first.
خیلی زندگی سخته شد دیگه. یه امیدم گفتم خدایا ما چی وقت داشته باشم که ما یک روز زکی ده زندگی بینگرم. خیلی سخت بود. شکر.
Just like Zaki, there are many refugees still living in separation from their loved ones. Refugee advocates need the support of communities to reunite those who have been living in limbo.
We can fight together very strongly with a united voice. There are thousands and thousands of Hazaras living in Australia, and we're a big power. We can shift decisions, and we don't acknowledge that. My hope is that we have a united Hazara movement towards social justice. Not to just fight domestically on social justice or injustice policies, but also internationally.
Hearing Zaki's untold story highlights the importance of all communities to come together and collectively advocate for the rights of refugees. As individuals and members of the community, we have a moral responsibility to listen to refugee stories and support their basic human rights. Thank you.
بیا می جان بس بچم دیگه